The salvage vessel Meridian's Hope moved slowly through the void sectors, a place where most ships refused to go. Out here, the stars were scattered and distant, like forgotten lights in an endless ocean of darkness. Captain Lisa Morgan had been staring at her sensor screens for the past 2 hours, watching readings that shouldn't exist. Something was out there, something big, and it wasn't showing up the way normal objects did. "Captain, you really need to see this," Rick Davis called out from the engineering station. His voice had that edge to it, the one he got when something truly weird was happening. Rick had been working salvage operations for 15 years, and Lisa had never heard him sound quite like this. Lisa walked over to the main view screen and felt her breath catch. Floating in the absolute emptiness of space was a station. Not just any station, but something massive and ancient, its metal hull scarred by countless years of cosmic radiation and micrometeorite impacts. The structure was dark except for a few dim lights that pulsed irregularly, like a dying heartbeat. "Run a full scan," Lisa ordered. "I want to know everything about that thing before we get any closer." The computer systems hummed and clicked as they processed the data. What came back made no sense. The station's design was old, incredibly old, but it used construction methods that predated anything in the galactic databases. The hull was covered in symbols and markings that the translation software couldn't even begin to interpret. These weren't random scratches or damage. These were deliberate, carefully placed characters from a language that no one had seen before. "How old are we talking?" Lisa asked. Rick shook his head slowly. "The computer is giving me estimates between 7 and 9,000 years. Captain, nothing survives that long in space. This thing should be debris by now." But it wasn't debris. It was intact, sealed, and still had minimal power running through its systems. Lisa made her decision quickly. "Get the boarding team ready. Full environmental suits, emergency supplies, and keep the link open at all times. If anything goes wrong, I want us back on this ship in under 2 minutes." Within an hour, Lisa was leading a team of 5 through the corroded airlock of the ancient station. The moment they crossed the threshold, emergency lighting began to flicker on, section by section, as if the station recognized their presence. The corridors were built for beings about their size, with doorways and ceiling heights that matched human proportions almost perfectly. Dust floated in the stale air, untouched for thousands of years. "This place feels wrong," muttered Jackie Torres, the team's security officer. She kept her hand near her sidearm, eyes scanning every shadow. They moved deeper into the station, their boots echoing on metal floors that had felt no footsteps in millennia. The walls were lined with panels and controls, all dead and dark. Some sections had collapsed, forcing them to squeeze through narrow gaps and climb over debris. Every step felt like walking through a tomb, a monument to something that had died long ago. Tom Wilson, the medical officer, stopped suddenly at a sealed door. His scanner was going crazy. "Captain, I'm reading a power source behind here. Active power, not just residual energy." Lisa examined the door. Unlike everything else they'd seen, this one was clean, sealed tight, and showed signs of regular maintenance systems still functioning. She found a manual override panel and, after several attempts, managed to trigger the door mechanism. It opened with a hydraulic hiss that seemed impossibly loud in the dead silence. The room beyond was a command center. Consoles lined the walls, most of them dark, but a few still displayed information in that unknown language. In the center of the room stood a cryogenic pod, its surface covered in frost but its status lights glowing a steady green. The pod was still active, still functioning, still keeping whatever was inside alive. Lisa approached slowly, her heart pounding. Through the frosted glass she could make out a shape. A person. A man wearing some kind of military uniform that looked ancient but well-preserved. The uniform was dark blue with patches on the shoulders. One patch showed a symbol of stars and stripes. The other had text that her suit's camera picked up and translated, NASA, and below it, United Earth Defense Initiative. "What's Earth?" Rick asked over the comm link. "No idea," Lisa replied. "But whatever it is, it's not in any of our historical databases." Tom moved forward with his medical scanner. "Captain, his vital signs are stable. The pod kept him alive all this time. If we open it, he should survive the revival process, but there's no telling what condition he'll be in mentally." Lisa studied the man's face through the glass. He looked young, maybe 30 years old, with short dark hair and a strong jaw. But he'd been asleep for thousands of years. Everyone he'd ever known was dust. Everything he'd ever cared about was gone. Opening that pod felt like a terrible responsibility. "Open it," she said finally. Her crew hesitated. Jackie looked uncertain. Tom checked his equipment twice. Rick stood back, ready to move if something went wrong. but they followed orders. Tom found the manual release system and activated the revival sequence. The pod hissed and clicked as ancient systems came to life. Frost melted away from the glass. Pressures equalized. And then the lid opened with a mechanical whir that echoed through the silent station. The man's eyes snapped open instantly. No gradual awakening, no confusion. His eyes were sharp and alert, scanning the room with military precision. His hand shot out, reaching for his hip where a weapon should have been. When he found nothing, his body tensed, ready to fight with his bare hands if necessary. "Identify yourselves," he commanded. His voice was rough, like someone who hadn't spoken in a very long time, but the authority in it was unmistakable. This was someone used to giving orders and having them followed immediately. Lisa held up her hands, showing she meant no threat. "I'm Captain Lisa Morgan of the salvage vessel Meridian's Hope. You're aboard what we're calling Outpost Cerberus Station. We found you in cryosleep. What's your name?" The man's eyes swept over each member of her team, assessing, categorizing, determining threat levels. When he spoke again, his voice had the mechanical quality of someone giving a formal report. "Commander James Reeves, United Earth Navy, serial number Delta 79er. Status report. Where is my crew? What's the current tactical situation?" Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. The way he spoke, the terms he used, everything about him suggested military training from a culture she'd never encountered. "Commander, I need to ask you something. What year do you think it is?" James Reeves frowned, confusion crossing his face for the first time. 2247. October 15th, Standard Earth Calendar. We were monitoring the frontier sectors when orders came down to evacuate. The sun was dying faster than predicted. He stopped, suddenly noticing their equipment, their clothing, the technology that surrounded them. "How long have I been in that pod?" Tom checked the cryopod's chronometer, his hands shaking slightly as he read the numbers. "According to this, sir, 8,217 years." The silence that followed was absolute. James Reeves stared at Tom, then at Lisa, then at the walls around them. His jaw clenched. His hands formed fists. And for just a moment, the soldier's mask cracked, revealing the man underneath. A man who'd just learned that everything and everyone he'd ever known was gone, lost to time. "Then Earth didn't make it," he said quietly. "The evacuation failed. They all died." Before anyone could respond, the station suddenly shuddered. A deep vibration ran through the floor, through the walls, through the very bones of the ancient structure. Somewhere far below them, in the deepest parts of Outpost Cerberus, something that had been sleeping for 8,000 years was beginning to wake up. Commander James Reeves sat in the station's command center, his hands trembling as he accessed the old computer systems. The screens flickered to life, displaying information that made Lisa and her crew exchange worried glances. The data was fragmented, corrupted by time, but what remained told a story that no one in the modern galaxy had ever heard. "Earth," Reeves began, his voice hollow. "It was our home world. A planet with blue oceans and green continents, orbiting a yellow star we called Sol. According to your records, that star went supernova about 5,000 years after I entered cryosleep." He paused, staring at the ancient data. "Everyone I knew, everything we built, all of it gone in an instant of cosmic fire." Lisa watched him carefully. The man was handling impossible news with remarkable control, but she could see the cracks forming. His fingers moved across the console with practiced ease, pulling up files that were older than most civilizations in the known galaxy. "But that's not the whole story, is it?" Lisa asked gently. Reeves shook his head. "No. Humanity didn't just disappear quietly. We fought. We explored. We built things that would make your current technology look primitive." He pulled up a star map, showing dozens of systems marked with human designations. "In less than 100 years we spread across 50 star systems. We were aggressive, maybe too aggressive. We built military outposts on the edges of known space because we knew something was out there." Rick had been working on restoring more of the station's systems. His engineering console suddenly lit up with warnings. "Captain, something's happening. The station's main power core is coming online. I'm reading energy signatures throughout the entire structure." Tom checked his medical scanner, then looked at Reeves with understanding. "It's responding to him. The station recognizes his biosignature, his genetic markers. It thinks its commander has returned." Reeves stood up, a grim expression on his face. Cerberus Station was designed to be autonomous. If the crew died or abandoned it, the systems would enter standby mode. They'd wait for someone with proper authorization to return. He looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time in millennia. "I never thought I'd be that someone." Lisa's team followed Reeves through the awakening station. Lights flickered on in sections that had been dark for thousands of years. Doors that had been sealed opened automatically as Reeves approached. The station was coming alive around them, recognizing its master after an impossibly long sleep. They descended deeper into Cerberus, taking elevators that groaned and shuddered but still functioned. Jackie kept her weapon ready, uneasy about the ancient machinery surrounding them. The air grew colder as they went down, and the hum of massive power systems grew louder with each level. "Commander," Lisa said as they walked, "you said you were monitoring the frontier. What were you watching for?" Reeves was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "We called them the Riftborn. Entities from somewhere else, somewhere beyond normal space. They appeared near our outer colonies first. Ships would vanish. Entire stations would go silent. When we finally encountered them directly, we learned the horrible truth. They fed on stars, draining their energy until the stars collapsed or exploded. The elevator stopped and the doors opened onto a massive corridor. The walls here were different, reinforced with materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Warning symbols covered every surface, though most were in that ancient Earth language that the translation software struggled with. Rick was scanning everything with his equipment. "Captain, I'm picking up something big ahead. Really big. The energy readings are off the scale." They emerged into a chamber so vast that their lights barely reached the far walls. Lisa felt her breath catch as she looked up and saw it. A ship. No, not just a ship. A warship of such immense scale that it defied belief. The vessel was easily 3 kilometers long, its hull black as night and covered in weapon systems that Lisa couldn't even begin to identify. "What is that thing?" Jackie breathed, her voice filled with awe and fear. Reeves walked to a nearby control terminal, his fingers moving across the ancient controls as if no time had passed at all. The massive hangar bay illuminated section by section, revealing more of the ship's terrifying details. Missile batteries lined its flanks. Energy weapon ports dotted its surface like pores on skin. The bow of the ship looked less like a vessel and more like a predator's jaw, designed to tear through anything in its path. Text appeared on every screen in the hangar, first in the ancient Earth language, then slowly translating to modern standard. USEV Defiant Shadow. United States Earth Vessel. Dreadnought Class. Status Standby Mode. "You built this?" Lisa asked, unable to hide the shock in her voice. "Your people built this monster?" Reeves nodded slowly. "Not just this one. We built 12 of them, though I don't know if any of the others survived. These ships were humanity's answer to an enemy that could destroy stars. We couldn't fight the Riftborn with conventional weapons. They existed partially outside normal space, could phase through solid matter, and their technology manipulated the fabric of reality itself." Tom was reading the ship's specifications on a nearby terminal, his face growing paler by the second. "These weapons? Captain, some of these are designed to collapse spacetime itself. These missiles carry warheads that can create localized black holes. This ship has a main cannon that fires packets of collapsed dimensions. We built what we needed to survive," Reeves said quietly. "And it still wasn't enough. The Riftborn kept coming. They consumed our colonies. They drained our sun. We fought them across 50 systems, burning entire regions of space to drive them back. That's why your void sectors exist. It's not naturally empty space. Humanity scorched it clean, turned it into a dead zone to contain the threat." Lisa felt a chill run through her. "You're saying humanity sacrificed themselves to save the rest of the galaxy? A galaxy that doesn't even remember you existed?" "We did what needed to be done," Reeves replied. "When the sun started dying, when we knew Earth couldn't be saved, Command gave the order. All personnel were to evacuate to the outer colonies. I was the ranking officer at Cerberus Station. I ordered my crew to the escape pods. Someone needed to stay behind to maintain the warning beacons, to make sure the Riftborn didn't follow our people through the evacuation routes." Rick's console suddenly erupted with alarms. "Captain, the station's defense sensors are detecting something. Multiple somethings. They're not showing up on our ship scanners, but Cerberus is tracking them." Reeves moved to the defense terminal, his face hardening as he read the data. "No, it can't be. They were sealed away. We made sure of it." "What is it?" Lisa demanded. Reeves looked up at the defiant shadow, hanging silent in its ancient berth. "The Riftborn. The station sensors are designed to detect their dimensional signatures. They're out there in the void sectors. Not many, not yet, but enough." He turned to Lisa, and she saw true fear in his eyes for the first time. "The seal is breaking. Whatever humanity did to contain them 8,000 years ago, it's failing. And if the Riftborn are returning, then we have very little time. The Defiant Shadow systems began to hum, responding to the threat data being fed from the station. Lights flickered on throughout the massive warship. Weapon systems ran diagnostic checks. The ancient vessel was preparing itself for battle against an enemy that killed stars. "This is why the station brought you here," Reeves said, looking at Lisa and her crew. "Cerberus has been waiting all this time, watching, monitoring. It detected the Riftborn's return and sent out a signal, a beacon that your salvage ship picked up. It needs a crew. It needs people to help me stop what's coming." Jackie gripped her weapon tighter. "Commander, with all due respect, we're a salvage crew. We're not soldiers. We can't fight things that destroy stars." Reeves looked at the Defiant Shadow, then back at them. "Neither were we, at first. We were explorers, scientists, engineers. The Riftborn made us into something else. They forced us to become the thing we needed to be to survive." He placed his hand on the terminal, and the ship's AI responded, displaying combat protocols that were designed for a war against cosmic horrors. "The question is," Reeves continued, his voice steady despite the impossible situation, "are you willing to learn?" The Defiant Shadow filled the hangar with a deep, resonant hum that Lisa could feel in her chest. It wasn't just the sound of engines starting. It was something more fundamental, like the ship itself was breathing after a very long sleep. Lights ran along its hull in patterns that seemed almost alive, and the massive vessel shifted slightly on its docking clamps as systems that had been dormant for millennia came back online. A voice emerged from the ship's speakers, clear and precise despite its age. "Biosignature recognized. Commander James Reeves, authorization level Alpha. Authentication codes required to proceed with full system activation." Reeves stood before the terminal, his hand hovering over the input panel. Lisa noticed he was hesitating, something she hadn't seen from him before. The soldier who had woken from 8,000 years of sleep with perfect composure was now uncertain. "Commander?" Lisa prompted gently. Reeves took a deep breath. "Once I enter these codes, there's no going back. This ship will consider itself on active duty. Its systems are designed for one purpose only." He looked up at the massive warship. "I need you to understand what you're asking me to wake up. Then help us understand," Lisa said. "What exactly was this ship built to fight?" Reeves moved to a different console, pulling up files that made the screen flicker with age. Images appeared that made Lisa's crew step back instinctively. They showed things that shouldn't exist, creatures or entities that seemed to twist and bend in ways that hurt to look at. Space around them appeared warped, distorted, as if reality itself was rejecting their presence. "The Riftborn," Reeves said, his voice grim. "We never figured out if they were aliens in the traditional sense or something else entirely. They came from somewhere beyond our dimension, breaking through into normal space like sharks breaching water. And they were hungry." The images shifted, showing star systems. But these weren't healthy systems. The stars looked wrong, dimmer, with dark patches spreading across their surfaces like disease. "They fed on stellar energy," Reeves continued. "They would attach themselves to a star and drain it, pulling out the nuclear fire that kept it burning. Some stars collapsed into black holes. Others went supernova. Earth's sun didn't die from natural causes. It was murdered." Tom accessed another section of the database, his medical training drawing him to the human cost of the war. What he found made him pale. "Captain, you need to see this. These are medical records from the colonies." The files showed generation after generation of humans being born, raised, and trained for a single purpose: war. Children were educated in weapons systems before they learned to read. Entire colonies had been converted into massive weapons factories. The records showed genetic modifications, experimental enhancements, anything that might give humanity an edge against an enemy that defied the laws of physics. "We stopped being explorers," Reeves said quietly. "The Riftborn swept through 50 star systems in less than 20 years. Billions died. Entire worlds went dark. We didn't have time to be scientists or philosophers anymore. We had to become something else, something harder, or we'd have been wiped out completely." Rick was examining the technical specifications of the weapons systems on the Defiant Shadow. His hands shook as he read. "These aren't just weapons. They're reality killers. This main cannon doesn't fire projectiles or energy beams. It fires collapsed dimensions. These missiles create localized gravitational anomalies strong enough to trap things that exist outside normal space. We built 12 of these ships," Reeves explained. "Each one took the resources of an entire star system to construct. The Defiant Shadow and her sister ships were designed to hunt the Riftborn in their own territory, To chase them back through the dimensional rifts and seal those rifts permanently. Did it work? Lisa asked. For a while, Reeves replied. We pushed them back system by system. The cost was horrific. We lost billions of people. We turned vast regions of space into graveyards. But we drove them back, sealed the rifts, and created the dead zone you call the void sectors as a buffer. We thought we'd won. He paused, his jaw tight. We thought we'd bought the galaxy peace even if it cost us everything. Jackie had been monitoring the station's sensor network. Her console suddenly erupted with warnings that made everyone jump. Captain, I'm picking up something on the long-range sensors. Multiple contacts, but they're not showing up like normal ships. They're phasing in and out of detection like they're not fully here. Rick rushed to his station, his fingers flying across the controls. She's right. The energy signatures matched the warning protocols in the station's database. Captain, these readings are identical to the Rift-borne signatures from Reeves' historical records. Reeves moved with sudden urgency, pulling up the sensor data on the main display. His face went from concerned to horrified in seconds. No. They can't be back. The seals should have held for thousands more years. How many? Lisa demanded. 3 contacts confirmed, maybe more hiding in dimensional folds, Rick reported. They're not approaching directly. They're circling like they're testing our defenses. Tom was reading the historical combat reports. According to these records, even a single Rift-borne ship could tear through a fleet of conventional vessels. 3 of them together destroyed an entire battle group. Outside the station, space itself began to change. Reality rippled like water, and through those ripples came ships that made Lisa's mind struggle to process what she was seeing. They were organic, alive in some terrible way, with hulls that seemed to be made of compressed darkness and light that moved in patterns that defied geometry. The vessels didn't move through space so much as they folded space around themselves, appearing in one location and then another without crossing the distance between. They found us, Reeves said, his voice tight. After 8,000 years, they found Cerberus Station. They must have detected the power signature when the station woke up. The Defiant Shadows AI spoke again, its tone now carrying an edge of urgency. Hostile entities detected. Threat assessment, extreme. Recommend immediate weapons authorization and combat protocols. Lisa looked at her crew. They were salvage operators, not soldiers. Rick was an engineer who fixed broken equipment. Tom was a doctor who'd never treated anything worse than broken bones and space sickness. Jackie was security, but she'd only ever dealt with pirates and smugglers. None of them were prepared for this. But as she watched the Rift-borne ships move closer, phasing in and out of reality like predators stalking prey, she realized they had no choice. Commander Reeves, Lisa said formally, enter your authorization codes. Wake up your ship. Reeves nodded and turned to the terminal. His fingers moved across the controls with the certainty of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Command authorization Reeves, James. Serial Delta 79er. Activation code, Prometheus Protocol. Let there be light in the darkness. The Defiant Shadow responded instantly. The hum became a roar as the main power core reached full capacity. Weapon systems that had been dormant for millennia armed themselves in seconds. The ship's hull began to glow with barely contained energy. Targeting systems locked onto the Rift-borne vessels with predatory focus. All personnel, this is Commander Reeves, his voice echoed through both the station and the ship. Hostile contact confirmed. This is not a drill. Defiant Shadow is going to active combat status. One of the Rift-borne ships moved closer to the station, reality bending around it like heat waves. Lisa could see something through her viewport now, something that made her stomach turn. The ship was covered in what looked like eyes, hundreds of them, all different sizes, all watching with an intelligence that felt ancient and utterly alien. The Defiant Shadow's weapons systems came fully online. Targeting lasers painted the Rift-borne ships with light they couldn't escape. The ancient warship was ready for battle. They've found us, Reeves repeated, his hands moving to the weapons control. And they're just as hungry as they were 8,000 years ago. The Rift-borne didn't give them time to think. One moment, the alien ships were circling at a distance. The next, they struck with a speed that defied physics. The first attack hit the Meridian's hope before anyone could react. Lisa watched in horror from Cerberus Station as her ship's shields flared bright blue, then shattered like glass. The Rift-borne weapons didn't fire projectiles or energy beams. They fired something worse, waves of force that seemed to unravel the very fabric of matter itself. Where the weapons touched the hull, metal simply ceased to exist, leaving gaping wounds that vented atmosphere into space. All hands evacuate now. Lisa screamed into her communicator. Get to the escape pods. Move, move, move. On her view screen, she could see crew members running through the corridors of her dying ship. Hull breaches erupted across 3 decks simultaneously. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, sealing off entire sections. People she'd worked with for years were trapped, their life signs winking out one by one on her console. The Meridian's hope was being torn apart in seconds, and there was nothing she could do. Then the Defiant Shadow moved. The ancient warship launched from its berth with such force that the entire station shook. There was no slow acceleration, no gradual buildup of speed. One instant it was docked, the next it was a black streak cutting through space like a bullet fired from the hand of an angry god. Reeves stood alone on the ship's massive bridge, a space designed to hold 200 crew members but now occupied by just one man. Cables extended from the command chair, plugging directly into ports on his uniform that interfaced with his body. His eyes glowed faintly as the ship's neural network connected with his mind, making him and the vessel one unified weapon. All crew, this is Defiant Shadow Actual. His voice came through every speaker on the station. Brace for combat operations. This is going to get rough. What happened next made Lisa and her team understand why the Riftborn had feared humanity enough to destroy their entire species. The Defiant Shadow opened fire with weapons that belonged in nightmares. Missiles launched from tubes along its flanks, but these weren't ordinary missiles. They accelerated to 98% of light speed in less than a second, hitting the Riftborn ships with the force of small nuclear explosions. Where they impacted, the alien vessels simply vaporized, turned to expanding clouds of superheated plasma. One Riftborn ship tried to phase out of normal space, using its dimensional technology to escape. The Defiant Shadow anticipated the move. Energy weapons Lisa couldn't even name fired in a coordinated pattern, creating a cage of intersecting beams that locked space itself into place. The Riftborn ship was caught halfway through its phase shift, stuck between dimensions. What followed was brutal. The ancient warship fired what its systems labeled as quantum disruptors, weapons that literally tore holes in reality. The trapped Riftborn ship was pulled apart by forces that existed outside normal physics, its pieces scattered across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The third Riftborn vessel tried to fight back. It fired its matter-unraveling weapons at the Defiant Shadow, the same weapons that had destroyed the Meridian's hope in seconds. The ancient warship's shields absorbed the attack and held. These weren't normal shields. They bent space around the ship, creating layers of folded reality that the Riftborn weapons couldn't penetrate. Reeves didn't give the enemy a second chance. The Defiant Shadow's main cannon, a weapon that ran the entire length of the ship's spine, charged up with power that made space itself glow. When it fired, the beam that emerged wasn't made of energy or matter. It was made of collapsed dimensional space, a packet of reality compressed down to a point and then released with devastating force. The Riftborn ship tried to dodge, but there was nowhere to go. The dimensional weapon hit it dead center and the alien vessel simply folded in on itself, crushed down to nothing by forces that no living thing should have to witness. The entire battle lasted less than 4 minutes. When the weapon's fire stopped, the Meridian's hope was a floating wreck, but the escape pods had made it to the station. The 3 Riftborn ships were gone, completely destroyed. And the Defiant Shadow hung in space like a black monument to humanity's capacity for violence. Lisa and her crew stood in stunned silence, watching the ancient warship through the station's viewports. They'd just witnessed something that would give them nightmares for years. Reeves' voice came through the communication system, calmer now but carrying a weight of exhaustion. Cerberus Station, this is Defiant Shadow. Immediate threat neutralized. Prepare to receive survivors from Meridian's hope. As the escape pods docked with the station, Lisa finally found her voice. Commander, what did we just see? That was humanity at war, Reeves replied quietly. That was what we became when we had no choice. And Captain, I need you to understand something. That fight? That was nothing. Those were scouts, advance units. The real Riftborn forces will be much worse. Rick was analyzing the sensor data from the battle, his hands shaking as he processed what he was seeing. The energy output from that ship in 4 minutes exceeded what our entire fleet could produce in a week. And according to these readings, the Defiant Shadow was only operating at 30% capacity. Tom was treating injured crew members from the Meridian's hope, but he'd been watching the battle too. Commander Reeves, your historical records. How many of these encounters did humanity survive? Hundreds, Reeves answered. We fought the Riftborn across 50 star systems over 20 years. Each battle cost us ships, colonies, billions of lives. We learned to fight like them, dirty and desperate. We stopped following the old rules of war because the Riftborn didn't have rules. They just consumed and moved on. Reeves accessed the ship's historical archives, pulling up data that painted a picture of systematic destruction on a scale that was hard to comprehend. The void sectors exist because humanity burned them clean. We destroyed everything in 50 systems, made the entire region uninhabitable, all to create a dead zone that the Riftborn couldn't cross. We turned stars into bombs, collapsed planets into the cores of their own suns, did things that still haunt me 8,000 years later. Lisa looked at the tactical display, seeing the vast emptiness of the void sectors stretching away in all directions. You're saying humanity did this? Killed 50 entire star systems. We sacrificed 50 systems to save thousands more, Reeves corrected. And it worked for a while. We sealed the dimensional rifts, contained the Riftborn threat, and gave the galaxy 8,000 years of peace. But that seal is breaking now. Those 3 ships we just destroyed? They're proof that the Riftborn are finding ways through again. Jackie had been silent through all of this, but now she spoke up. How many more are out there, Commander? How many Riftborn are waiting to break through? Reeves was quiet for a long moment. When he finally answered, his voice was heavy with the weight of terrible knowledge. According to the last intelligence reports before Earth fell, we estimated there were millions of them in their home dimension. Millions of ships, all hungry, all looking for stars to consume. We only fought their advance forces, and that nearly destroyed us. The reality of what they were facing settled over the crew like a physical weight. This wasn't a problem they could solve with clever engineering or diplomacy. This was an extinction-level threat, something that had already killed one species and was coming back for more. Lisa looked at her surviving crew members, then at the defiant shadow floating outside. She thought about her destroyed ship, her dead crew members, and the empty space where 50 star systems used to be. Then she made a decision that would change everything. Commander Reeves, she said formally, the Meridian's hope is gone. My crew and I have nowhere else to go. You said you need a crew for that ship. We're offering our services if you'll have us. Reeves looked at her through the communication screen, this man from 8,000 years in the past, the last survivor of a species that had fought and died to save a galaxy that would forget they ever existed. Welcome aboard the Defiant Shadow, he said. Now let me teach you how humans fight when everything is on the line. The Galactic Council Chamber was a monument to 1,000 different civilizations, a massive station that orbited a neutral star and served as the political heart of known space. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered here to debate policy, settle disputes, and guide the future of their species. They considered themselves the pinnacle of civilization, the guardians of peace and order. They were completely unprepared for what Commander James Reeves was about to show them. Lisa stood beside Reeves in the council chamber, watching as the various representatives whispered among themselves. Some looked curious. Others looked annoyed that their time was being wasted by a salvage captain and a man claiming to be from a species that had died thousands of years ago. The council leader, an elderly diplomat from one of the founding worlds, gestured for silence. Captain Morgan, you've made some extraordinary claims, the leader said. You say this man is from ancient Earth, that an extinct enemy is returning, and that we're all in danger. These are serious accusations that require serious proof. Reeves stepped forward, connecting a data device to the Council's main system. I'm transmitting the complete war archives from Outpost Cerberus. Everything humanity learned about the Riftborn, every battle we fought, every sacrifice we made. Watch it all, then tell me I'm wasting your time. The main display activated, filling the chamber with images and data that was 8,000 years old. The Council watched in growing horror as the story unfolded. They saw Earth in its prime, a beautiful blue world full of life and hope. They saw humanity's first ventures into space, those early explorers driven by curiosity and wonder. They saw the first colonies spreading across the stars, humans building homes on distant worlds. Then they saw the Riftborn arrive. The footage was fragmentary, corrupted by age, but what remained was clear enough. The alien ships appeared without warning, tearing through dimensions like paper. Human colonies went silent one by one. Rescue missions found entire worlds stripped of life, their stars dimmed and dying. And through it all, humanity fought back with increasing desperation. The Council watched as peaceful explorers transformed into hardened warriors. They saw children being trained in weapons before they could write their own names. They saw entire planets converted into weapons factories. They saw humanity's gradual transformation from dreamers into something harder, something capable of terrible things in the name of survival. The final files showed Earth's last days. The sun was dying, consumed from within by rift-born entities that fed on stellar fire. Evacuation fleets fled to the outer colonies, carrying as many people as they could save. But billions remained, trapped on a world circling a dying star. The last entry showed what humanity chose to do with their final moments. They didn't go quietly into extinction. Instead, they overloaded their own sun, turning it into a massive dimensional bomb that sealed the rifts through which the Riftborn traveled. The explosion vaporized Earth and everything within 5 light-years, but it created a barrier that trapped the Riftborn in their own dimension. Humanity died saving a galaxy full of strangers they would never meet. The council chamber was silent when the files ended. Some representatives were crying. Others looked angry or confused. All of them looked shaken by what they'd witnessed. "Your species sacrificed everything," the council leader said quietly. "And we forgot you ever existed." "Humanity died 8,000 years ago," Reeves said, his voice flat and emotionless. "What I'm here to tell you is that their sacrifice is about to become meaningless. The dimensional seal is breaking. The Riftborn are returning. And you're not ready to face them." Political arguments erupted immediately. Some factions demanded that the Defiant Shadow be placed under council control, that such a powerful weapon couldn't be allowed to operate independently. Others wanted the ship dismantled and studied. A few even suggested that Reeves himself should be detained for possessing technology too dangerous for any one person to control. Reeves listened to them argue for exactly 30 seconds before cutting through the noise. "I owe nothing to governments built on my species' ashes. The Defiant Shadow answers to me and me alone. You can accept my help or refuse it, but you will not control me." The council leader tried to restore order, but it was too late. The chamber descended into chaos as different factions shouted over each other. That's when the alarms started blaring. Reality fractured outside the council station. Space itself tore open like fabric, and through those tears came ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The Riftborn had arrived in force, and they'd brought an invasion fleet that made the earlier scouts look like insects. At the center of the fleet was something that defied description. A vessel, if it could even be called that, large enough to eclipse stars. Its presence bent light around it, warping space in ways that made sensors scream warnings. This was a hive ship, a mobile fortress that carried entire armies of Riftborn warriors. The Council's defense fleet mobilized immediately. 300 warships, representing the combined military might of a dozen major civilizations, moved to intercept the invaders. They fired every weapon they had, filling space with enough firepower to vaporize planets. It wasn't enough. The Riftborn ships phased through the attacks like they weren't even there, then struck back with their matter-unraveling weapons. Council ships simply ceased to exist, their hulls dissolving into nothing. The entire defense fleet was destroyed in less than 8 minutes. Only the Defiant Shadow stood between the Riftborn Hive fleet and complete extinction. Reeves had anticipated this. The ancient warship was already moving, its weapon systems armed and ready. Lisa and her crew had spent weeks learning the ship's systems, understanding how to fight the way humans once did. Now they put that knowledge to use. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Defiant Shadow fought with a savagery that horrified the watching council members. When missiles ran low, Reeves ordered ramming attacks, using the ship's armored bow to tear through enemy vessels. When power cores overheated, he ordered overloads, turning damaged sections into massive bombs that took out entire squadrons of Riftborn ships. Rick worked the engineering stations, pushing systems far beyond their design limits, finding ways to squeeze more power from reactors that were already running hot enough to melt steel. Tom coordinated damage control, keeping injured crew members alive even as the ship shook from constant impacts. Jackie managed the point defense systems, shooting down incoming fire with precision born from weeks of desperate practice. And Lisa stood beside Reeves on the command bridge, learning to think like a human warrior from 8,000 years ago. She learned that survival sometimes meant accepting terrible costs. She learned that the difference between victory and extinction was often just the willingness to do whatever it took, no matter how brutal. The Defiant Shadow used weapons that collapsed space itself, creating gravitational anomalies that crushed enemy ships like tin cans. It fired dimensional torpedoes that sent Riftborn vessels spinning into other realities. It fought dirty, fought smart, and never, ever stopped moving. But the Hive ship kept coming, pushing through the battle toward the Council station. If it reached the station, billions would die in minutes. Reeves made his decision. "All hands prepare for final protocol. We're ending this now." He accessed the ship's deepest systems, pulling up weapons files that were sealed behind multiple layers of authorization. These were the weapons humanity had used only once before, the technology that had killed Earth's sun and sealed the dimensional rifts. "Commander, if you use that, it'll destroy the ship," Lisa said. "I know," Reeves replied calmly. "But it'll seal the rift permanently. The Riftborn won't be able to return for another 10,000 years, maybe longer. That's worth one old warship and one even older soldier." Lisa grabbed his arm. "There has to be another way." Reeves looked at her with eyes that had seen the death of everything he'd ever known. "There isn't. This is what the Defiant Shadow was built for. This is what I was born for. Let me finish what humanity started." The Riftborn hive ship materialized directly in front of them, close enough that they could see the twisted geometries of its hull. Reeves activated the weapon. The Defiant Shadow's main reactor didn't just overload. It collapsed, folding in on itself in a controlled implosion that created a temporary singularity. That singularity expanded, pulling in everything within 100 kilometers. The Riftborn hive ship was caught in the gravity well, unable to phase away fast enough. It was crushed, compressed down to nothing along with hundreds of its escort ships. But more importantly, the dimensional rift through which they'd emerged was sealed. Space itself fused shut, creating a barrier that would hold for millennia. The Defiant Shadow survived barely. Its hull was scarred, its weapons depleted, its reactor running on emergency power. But it had won. The Riftborn were gone, trapped outside reality once again. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council offered Reeves everything they could think of. A new ship, a fleet of ships, an entire world if he wanted it. They offered him honors, titles, a place at the head of their military forces. Reeves refused it all. He had only one request. "Let me go back," he said simply. "Let the Defiant Shadow return to the void sectors. Let us patrol the darkness at the edge of your civilization, watching for threats the way Cerberus Station was designed to do. That's all humanity ever wanted. To stand watch so others could sleep safely." The Council agreed immediately. What else could they do? As the ancient warship prepared to depart, heading back toward the empty regions of space that humanity had died to create, Reeves transmitted one final message. It was broadcast across every communication channel, sent to every world in Council space, ensuring that this time humanity would not be forgotten. "This is Commander James Reeves of the United Earth vessel Defiant Shadow. Outpost Cerberus remains on station. The watch continues. Sleep well knowing that Earth's children still guard the night." The warship disappeared into the darkness of the void sectors, a black shadow carrying the last memory of a species that had saved the galaxy twice. And somewhere in that darkness, James Reeves stood watch, just as his people had always done, protecting strangers he would never meet from threats they would never see coming. Because that's what humans did. Even when they were the last of their kind, even when no one remembered their names, they stood between the darkness and the light. Earth's vigil continued.